Why do you come here, John, or Jane, or any of you? Why do you come to church on Sunday mornings? Perhaps not every Sunday, but why are you here? I certainly know that my pretty face isn't enough to get you out of bed on a Sunday morning. Each other's pretty, smiling, shining, welcoming faces, well, perhaps that's another story. The first time we go to church as adults, we go for some personal reason, out of some self-interest. Perhaps there is something missing in our lives. Perhaps some loss or tragedy has left us sad and confused or even bereft. Perhaps we are lonely and looking for like-minded people to build connections with. Perhaps we are looking for some kind of religious education for our children or a religious home for ourselves and our family. Perhaps we're looking for some kind of inspiration, some way of finding answers to the questions that vex our souls, something that will carry us through the week. For these and many other personal reasons, people seek out a church, a place to fill the need that has been growing inside, a place to call home. Our primary focus at first is on ourselves or our children. But then something magical happens. Funny thing, really, as the spirit that is alive within that congregation, that church community, catches hold of us, sometimes off guard, and enfolds us with its warmth and its vision. We begin finding answers, connections, the healing that we might be looking for. Our own spirits lift, our circle expands, and our focus begins to shift from inside of ourselves to outside of ourselves. We grow from thinking mostly about me and mine to getting more involved and bringing this warmth and vision and healing to others. John Eric, the subject of this morning's reading, was one of the first people who welcomed me when I started attending the Unitarian Society of Northampton, Florence, Massachusetts, in the winter of 1992. And I do still miss him after all these years. I miss his energy and his commitment, in his warm, welcoming presence. And I carry within me his vision that if you are going to make this church your spiritual home, then each one of you has the duty and the privilege of welcoming visitors and making each other feel at home. Each and every one of you has the duty and the privilege of doing what you can to get involved and make this church run effectively. Each one of you has the duty and the privilege of your financial support to share the burden of calling a minister, hiring staff, keeping the buildings maintained and the lights on. And each one of you has the duty and the privilege of helping to create the vision of who you are and who you will be in the future. And this is the time to create that vision. Next week, you will choose the search committee that will find your next minister. This committee will help you to envision where you want to go and what you want from that minister. And most of you have already heard that Greg Stevens, your Director of Religious Education, will be resigning at the end of June. A committee has been formed to begin the search for a new professional religious educator. This will be a great opportunity to revision and revitalize your programming for children and families. It is critically important to your growth and your vitality that you start bringing in more young families, and you need to find someone who will help you to do that. You have 3 buildings here that need some attention. Many of you pitched in last summer to clean out the buildings and spruce them up. Thank you. Thank you also to all those who contributed to painting the pew, a wonderful project that you will love and be proud of when we return to the meeting house. But as many of you who own property know, maintaining these buildings can't stop there. In this difficult national climate where people are so divided and we're losing the ability to listen to each other, we're losing the ability to create more democratic institutions, it seems. The ways that you respond to these challenges can become a beacon for the whole community. And all of these things that I've just mentioned cost money and will take your time as well. Your governing board and finance committee are now in the process of preparing next year's budget. $13,000 has to be added to next year's budget just for the search process. The search committee will have to prepare materials and fly in a few potential ministers and their families, house and feed them for pre-candidating weekends, and then bring in their final choice for the week-long process of meeting you. That's going to cost money. When I became, shortly after I joined the Unitarian Society in Northampton, I became the treasurer. And John Eric was on the finance committee. Now, meeting with the finance committee was at first a fairly daunting task. Most of the men on that committee, and they were all men at that time, they had at least 2 decades on me and had been part of the church seemingly forever. They were the foundation that had kept the church going through the lean times of struggle and low membership, and they were formidable. John Eric had been the treasurer during most of those lean years, and during those years, he would write a check out of his own personal checkbook to cover the shortfall in the church's budget every year. That church did not have a good way of talking about money, and most people were not aware of the difference between their contribution and the actual cost of running the church. So John would just write a check every year to take care of it. They were blessed because John was able and willing to cover their expenses, but this is not a responsible way to handle the stewardship of any church home. You shouldn't, for example, expect poor Bob Delar, your treasurer, to balance the budget any more than you should expect Sue and Christina, your membership co-chairs, to be the only ones welcoming new people, or Bob Koska, chair of Building and Grounds, to be the only one caring for your property. It is your duty and your privilege to fund the operating expenses of the church, to welcome each other, and to staff the committees and programs. All of you who are making this church your religious home. who have been touched here in some way that has answered your questions, healed your sorrow, and opened you to something beyond yourselves. As you prepare next year's budget, we need to know the estimates of what you will pledge to help pay for the church's expenses for the fiscal year that will begin on July 1st. There are many churches, that expect people to tithe, to give 10% of their income. We do not ask that, but we do ask that you carefully consider giving some percentage of your income, with 2% being the minimum. The giving chart in this year's pledge materials will help guide you. What we ask from you is your best estimate. If your circumstances change and you cannot fulfill the pledge, or if you can give more, just talk to me or Kathy Kay, the collector, the person who tracks pledge payments throughout the year. Now, as you can see, we're having a bit of a party after the service. All of the committees have set up tables around the room to give you treats and information about what each committee does. Please visit the different tables. Support your lay leaders. Learn about how much time and talent go into making the place run. And perhaps you might be moved to sign up for something. When you're on your sugar high, it's a good time. Giving you a way to give back. Through your commitment to service on projects and committees, through the sharing of your hearts, your hands, and your voices, you together shape the vision and goals of this church. Through this work of your hearts and hands and voices, you influence how this church lives and breathes and moves in the world. From how this church has served, healed, and called you, you stake a claim in how it will continue to serve, heal, and call others. The question, why do you come? Why are you here? Becomes transformed into who are you together and who are you called to be in this world? Without your hearts, your hands, and your voices in this work together, you will be missed, and the picture will not be complete. And there will still be something lost from the whole of who you can be. Last year, while I was on sabbatical, I attended our church in Provincetown. I pledged. I became involved. I was a guest preacher a few times. I loved being part of church life as a member once again. It was the hardest thing I had to give up to come here. The poet, Rainier Marie Rilke, expressed beautifully some of what a church community means to me when he wrote, "But because truly being here is so much, because everything here apparently needs us, this fleeting world which in some strange way keeps calling us, the most fleeting of all. Once for each thing, just once, no more. And we too, just once, and never again. But to have been this once, completely, even if only once, to have been at one with the earth, seems beyond undoing. Amen. And blessed be.